Good morning, entrepreneurs. So we are going to be starting a new series this week all about vendor events or craft shows. So if you have done, or if you are interested in doing vendor events or craft shows for your business, this week is for you. So last week, we just finished a whole series about doing trunk shows, virtual online events. Now we're going to talk about in-person events, in other words, craft shows and vendor events. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video, follow me so you can be updated every time I give you more advice about how to grow your online business. And for now, let's talk about vendor events. So our frequently asked question for today is, how should you prepare for your first vendor event? Now, I have 6 things that you should do if you are going to be doing a in-person vendor event. We're going to be going through those today. Number 1, to prepare for your first vendor event, you want to make sure that you have a 30-second-ish intro, and ideally you want to include props. And so I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. One of my clients recently was going to be doing a vendor event. And so she had a strategy session with me to figure out what she could do to make it more interesting. She happens to sell jewelry, which if you are in the jewelry industry, you know that this is so saturated, and there were going to be lots of other jewelry sellers at this particular event. So she needed a way to make herself stand out. She happens to do fire enamel jewelry. And so I recommended that she take an empty MAP gas canister, which is what they use for like plumbing, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and then incorporate it into her story. She also further told me that when she was learning how to do this, they used to use copper pennies as a way to practice using the torch. So I recommended that she give away pennies at her vendor event as lucky pennies. So she created a 30-second story about using the MAP gas torch and showed them what it looked like, and then offered them a lucky penny and explained that this is what she learned on. This story made her stand out as something different in her industry. Now, clearly, this story wouldn't work for your business, but having a story like this with actual props is really helpful. She also, of course, showed them her jewelry as she was telling them the story. This makes her stand out and be different. So how should you prepare for your first vendor event? Number 1, you need to create a story that's going to be memorable and bring props to talk about that story. Other things I told her is, if you have a story that might be in common with other people, you could use that. So she was selling some jewelry that was leaves. And I said, I don't know about you, but I'm from up north. I'm currently living in Texas. And so I used to go and rake up the leaves and jump in them with my brothers and my dad. This is a memory that a lot of people would have in that area. So if you share a story about how wearing these leaf jewelry makes them think about when you were a kid and playing with your dad in the leaves, this is a story that others will relate to as well. So if you can come up with a relatable story, this is really going to help you also. So tip number 1 for preparing for your first vendor event: come up with story, especially relatable story, and bring props into that story. And of course, your products as well. Number 2, make sure you have a banner or sign printed with your logo, website if you have one, and a QR code that they can easily scan to get signed up to your email list. Number 3, have a website sign up at your booth, especially depending upon what kind of event you're going to. There may be people that don't feel comfortable with tech. So letting them just write their name on a list may be easier for them. The 4th way that you should prepare for your first vendor event is to do a practice booth setup and rework it until it looks good. Now, I want you to think about, does this look good up close? And does this look good far away? Think about 100 feet away, because people are deciding from that far away whether they're even going to come to your booth. So make sure you take a step back and see if it looks interesting or boring. So if you're just joining us, don't forget to like this video, follow me to be updated with more tips about how to grow your online business. We are currently answering the question, how should you prepare for your first vendor event? We are on tip number 5, which is to prepare a game or activity or a giveaway, and to think about kids and dogs in this idea. So things you could give away, you could potentially give away like candy or food or drinks. You can have a way for them to give water to their dog if you're going to be at an outdoor event. All of these things are going to help you stand out to your ideal clients. We're going to be talking about these in future videos about this topic. So if you want to get notified of each of these videos, make sure that you follow me, because I'll be doing more questions about vendor events over the next few days. And then our final way to get prepared for your first vendor event is to make sure that you bring cables, your credit card processing, all these electronic things that you need to actually be able to make a sale. Okay, and so we've got a couple comments. Let's see what we've got. If you ever, okay, so these are more generic comments. one thing to remember from the bear cat is that you should always remember that you've made it through hard things already. You're going to make it through this as well. So if you get discouraged at the vendor event, just keep moving forward. One final note, I just did a podcast episode with Tanya Elliott, and it was all about vendor events. And so if you want to go listen to that podcast episode, she gave you some more tips and tricks. It was a very interesting episode, and it was just released in October. You can go and find that. The podcast is called Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-commerce. And all you have to do is type that into your favorite podcast host, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever, and you'll find me there, and you can look for that episode. It's the most recently released episode. So thank you guys so much for joining me on how should you prepare for your first vendor event. Don't forget to like this video, follow me, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll be talking more about frequently asked questions for vendor events. Have a great day.